And I walked up to him, he's sitting in a Model 3, and I said, "What do you think? Pretty cool, huh?" And he goes, "Yeah, Brian, I think it is pretty cool." I'm like, "Yeah." Okay. So I don't know how many of you guys even need to know this, but you can juice up your EV for cheap or free. So I don't know how many of you don't know who I am. I think maybe you guys don't. You might not know who I am. So I'm Brian from My Tesla Weekend. I'm an analyst who happens to have a YouTube channel, or a YouTuber who happens to be an analyst. I've been on a bunch of other channels: Best in Tesla, Brighter with Herbert, Oracle Investments, Out of Spec with with Kyle, and a bunch of channels. I've been at events all over the world, and I do this, and I come to things like this because I enjoy doing it. And this is a brand new presentation that no one's heard before today, from me at least. How much does gas cost? A little bit. It costs a little bit. Rumor has it, it's not free. And it varies quite a bit by season, by year, and by location, but it doesn't vary a lot within a location. So if you look at the map here, you can see the whole West Coast, pretty expensive. Parts of the South, a lot cheaper. Getting in a little closer on those numbers, you can see, do you know, this was as of yesterday. I pulled this up on AAA. There's places with gas at $3.16. Here we are at $4.50 and up, like suckers. But that's still pretty expensive, and it varies. So for the sake of this demonstration, we're going to be talking about a car that gets 30 miles to the gallon. Now, I have not owned more than maybe one car in my life that got 30 miles to the gallon, but that's just how it works. So 100 miles, 30 miles to the gallon, $4.50 means you're paying, where are we at? $15. So 15 cents a mile is what you're paying. Now, when it comes to charging, there's a bunch of different ways to charge. The most expensive is a fast public charger during peak hours. There's nothing more expensive. So you got 30 to 60 cents a kilowatt hour. Well, bigger ones, you could end up paying 20 to 45 bucks just to juice up. But 45 bucks, we're talking a big EV at that point on a bad day. So this is a neat chart I found. I think it's from Inside EVs, that shows how many miles are you actually getting for your watts. Hello.
Hey.
And I'm starting at the bottom, at the most efficient ones, because if we're comparing 30 mile per gallon cars versus, we need to compare to efficient ones. 253 miles or watts per mile. And you can also look crazy, go all the way down to the bottom of the list where you've got, 488. But these are the Taycan Turbo S, the Rivian R1T with the large pack. These are performance vehicles. Cannot compare them to a 30 mile per gallon car. So again, back at the top, these are some very reasonable cars. You've got the Lucid in there. You've got Teslas in there. You've got the Bolt strangely above the Lucid and the Tesla. Okay, they're getting better. So what does that mean? If you're doing the most expensive form of charging possible, getting something like 4 miles to the kilowatt, your cost per mile is 11 cents versus that 15 cents we said for gas. That's a heck of a deal. That's a savings. If you're doing the average, 30 miles a day kind of deal, 12 to 15,000 miles a year, you're saving 450 bucks if you exclusively charge at the most expensive kind of charger at the most expensive time of day. But we can do better, because the low end of that same range was 20 cents a kilowatt. Now, when we were driving from Longview up to Vancouver, BC, we saw that charging at Northgate would have been 55 cents a kilowatt hour, but if we could stretch to Everett and get there with 17% stated charge, it was 20 cents. So we did that.
Wow, that's quite a difference.
It was a very big difference, but it was a Thursday afternoon kind of into rush hour. So, and it might have been because we crossed the county line too, I'm not sure. But still with public chargers, but at more reasonable rates, now you're saving 1,200 bucks. 100 bucks a month is real money. You could take your sweetheart out somewhere nice. Or, not, whatever. So what does electricity cost? Because if we're going to compare it to home charging, What does electricity cost? I mean, I assume you all know what you're paying for power. In the Northwest, we have pretty good power rates, largely due to hydro, and in part because we sell some of our power out of state. So if we're talking 9, 10 cents, even 12 cents, I'm going to say 11 to be nice and high. 3 cents a mile is now your cost. $14.70 is your annual fuel savings. That's real money. That's your $100 a month for your sweetheart dinner date, plus $270 for yourself. But what if you could go, oh, and by the way, there are a number of these online you can find. This one is from chargeevc.org that will let you plug in any numbers you want to calculate your actual savings. So what about free? You know, here's a comprehensive list of free gas stations. Yeah, that's the list. Took a second. You're like, is there another slide? Yeah. Nope, that's it. Did you know that when you go to a factory tour, they give you a free sample? You know, Jelly Belly does it. I know Rainier used to back in the day. All the coffee roasters, the bakeries. But when you tour Exxon, they don't give you no free gas. That's terrible. You know, a lot of jobs will, come on, give you free stuff for working there. Be better if you could see the whole slide. I apologize, it's a little skewed. But strangely, working for Shell does not give you free gas because this is money. We don't give away money. So you can charge your car at the library. Now, not all libraries, of course, but some libraries. Some libraries will let you charge some cars. Unfortunately, there's 3 different kinds of handles because you've got your NACS handle for Teslas, you've got your CCS chargers for almost everything else, and you've still got those kicking around. What about hotel chains? A lot of hotel chains will let you charge for free, even if you're not a guest, because it's more work to make sure you're a guest than to just let whoever charge, because it's only putting out 20, 30 cents an hour. But what if that's too much work? Wouldn't it be nice to even find them? How would you even find them unless you went to a website called PlugShare? This is the Northwest. It looks a little squished because for some reason the projector's doing that today. But I just pulled up the Pacific Northwest, and every one of these dots represents a place you can charge an electric car for free. What? Now, some of these are supermarkets or Walgreens or campgrounds. You have to actually pay for a spot at the campground, but they don't charge extra for it. Some of them are city hall. Some of them are any number of things. But even this is not a good representation because when you zoom in, a crazy thing happens. More dots appear. And when you zoom in again, more dots appear. This is just around us right now. Those are the places you could get juice for free. Have you ever heard of free gas? I've heard of spend $10,000 and we'll give you a $100 gas card, but that's not quite the same thing. You could conceivably do a road trip after high school with your parents' Nissan Leaf. I don't recommend that. Maybe a Chevy Bolt, where you could actually just keep going and never pay. That's something you can't do with gas. Come on. So the best price is 0 per kilowatt hour for 0 per mile, and you're saving the entire $1,800. The only way you're going to save more is if you drive more, so maybe drive more. But this presentation goes one step further, because what if you could get paid for having an EV? Well, I only charge at home, so I don't care about those free chargers. Well, great. So first of all, there's a thing called time of use pricing. And time of use pricing is already introduced. You can talk to the gentleman in the next room about it, where during certain hours, late at night, instead of paying that 11, 12 cents, you're paying 7.2, 7.
10 to 6, 5.7.
5.7 cents a kilowatt.
Yeah.
That's
what I do.
yeah. And the reason is, at night, the factories aren't going as much. All the lights at the mall have been turned off. People aren't blasting their air conditioning. But the dam,
Offices are empty.
the what?
The office.
The offices are empty. But the dam is still producing electricity because there's a limit to how low you can go before water starts spilling over the front of the dam, and that creates a problem with soluble gases. You can actually get to a situation where there is negative power pricing. And this has happened in Germany famously. There have been a number of times where people were paid to charge their cars. You get paid. And it was only something like 5 cents a kilowatt, but for a 50 kilowatt charge, could you imagine going to the gas station? They say, look, we've got too much gas. If you take half a tank, I'll give you $2. That's not gonna happen. So one other thing that is coming. So these are Tesla Powerwalls. You can put them in to back up power in your house. They'll keep your lights on when the power goes out. But you can also use these to offset your power bill. So if you got a peak hour and you really need the air conditioning, you can have it use your battery instead and then charge it back up that night when it's 5.7 cents. And for that matter, these are the kinds of things that they use with the mega packs. These are being deployed all over the world. This is like a $200 million installation. They put it next to a wind farm to balance out the power. And they do it because 200 million is a steal. They get the money back. They earn their money back in like a year or two from not having to fire up peaker plants. So what that means is virtual power plants are becoming a thing where the utility will say, you know, instead of buying $200 million worth, why don't we just encourage people to put them in their own house and we'll buy power from them when we need it, as we need it, and not before. So in those cases, you will find people who make hundreds of dollars a year by participating in that. This one, it's cut off, but $500 a year is what he made in the first year just by allowing the grid to pull power from him when they needed it. Right, but I'm not telling you to get power plants. I'm saying that vehicle to grid is coming. Those big power walls that cost a fortune are only something like 10 to 20 kilowatt hours of capacity. Your car is 5 times that. So this is a thing that you could do in the future. You plug in your car, you start charging it, and you have it set so that if the price gets high enough, you start selling it back. So you come out in the morning and see, I'm only at 70% instead of 80 or 90. I must have made money last night. And in fact, that's something that Duke Energy is already doing with Ford. They've already got Ford Lightnings set up as virtual power parts of a virtual power plant to make money back for owners to make money off their car. So you could have, at the worst case scenario, cheap charging. The more normal case, charging at home, charging at night, you could have very cheap charging. But in some cases, it can be free if you don't mind a bit of hassle. And in some cases, at least in the near future, it could be cheaper than free. Nobody's going to do that. Nobody else can touch that business model. And that's the big EV advantage. Which leads to, of course, the portion where I tell you you can ask me anything. Questions? Young gentleman in the front. Still no questions. Okay.
All right, so when I see things like this, of course, I think about the nuances and the pros and cons. One of my concerns about vehicle to grid is one of the concerns people have when they drive an electric car is having it charged up for their range to be there when they're ready to use it. And what kind of discussions are there about mitigating that? Because you don't want to come out and find that they took half your battery charge and you're going to have to wait to get it back up.
Right. So the answer is you set it in the app. You in those cases, even with the virtual power plant, you can tell them the minimum price that you will accept and how much of your battery they are allowed to take. And I imagine if it's what? And when. And I imagine that will only get more and more sophisticated. So you could say, look, I'll let you take 20% if it's 50 cents a kilowatt hour. But if it's $2 a kilowatt hour, I'll let you take half the battery. Because at that price, why not? The California VPP payback thing that they did, they were paying customers $2 a kilowatt hour to get the power back because
Sounds so ridiculous, but you're saying it saves them the cost of the peaker fire up. And
Yes.
it's worth that.
And it's worth that
And
because
it tells you something too. We're paying a lot
more than we should.
because they don't need to charge as much as they have to cover their expense.
When you fire up the peaker plant, which is just meant to cover that little, they stay on for 8 hours. Whereas with your battery, they can draw it for a specific number of milliseconds.
Have we heard any good explanation as to why the electricity prices have gone up so much? Because like 2 years ago, the off-peak rate, the time of use rates, and where I live in Portland, were 5 cents a kilowatt hour, and off-peak, mid-peak was 7 something, and peak was like 12. Now there's double that, except for the off-peak.
I have not heard.
21 or something for the peak hours, which is maybe during the day there, but they've gone up so much that I asked why.
I have not heard an answer to that. I have not asked that. There is a guy from the power company in the next room.
Okay.
I'm sure he'd be happy to give you some platitudes.
I've been involved in rate cases for PG in particular. And as much as anything else, it's a political process that sets that with the Citizens Utility Board. The part of what's going on is the cost of supplying electricity to the outlying areas has gone up due to the fires and everything else.
Okay.
And those costs are being passed on to us.
Okay.
Because PG or utilities, at least in Oregon, there's a assumed rate of return for any investment, and then their cost of maintenance and everything else are added on top of that. And so this outlying cost is as much as anything else a maintenance cost, tree trimming, all this other type of stuff.
Right. Well, that makes sense.
And there's certainly aspects of inflation to it as well, because if everything costs more, that costs more too. But I haven't heard anything directly on that. Yes, sir.
Will existing cars that we've already bought be retrofit for the for sucking electricity out of?
No, because it's a whole different chipset, and it would be invasive surgery to try and change it. I interviewed Sandy Monroe from Monroe and Associates, the teardown titan, about this maybe a year ago, and he said it's only about $75 difference in parts, but they're not there. So it'll be the next generation of cars that'll be participating in that. Yeah.
Battery degradation.
Okay, so I was asked once, why isn't Tesla on board with vehicle to grid? They are pumping out so many cars, they would be the largest in the world. And the answer to me is, until we're using LFP batteries primarily. Because if you had this car running as on an LFP battery, it could cycle as high and low as it wanted. You could buy cars, forget Turo, forget renting them out, forget Uber, leave it in your garage plugged in and arbitrage all day. But then what would happen is you'd have a car that's 8 years old, still under warranty, no miles on it, and a fried battery that's been cycled 3,000 times. With LFP, you can do that, and it won't kill it. So I think that's what's going to happen is we have to get to that first, because there's no carve out in the warranty law that says how many cycles.
I just showed up a little bit late. LFP?
Lithium iron phosphate. I apologize. It was in my first talk, so I didn't actually cover it. So lithium ion batteries, when you think of the normal lithium ion batteries, those are the ones, they've got a lot of nickel, they've got a little bit of cobalt, and they don't want to be charged below 20% or above 80%. You can do it, but please don't, it'll shorten the life. LFP is lithium iron phosphate. It's a different chemistry. You can charge 0 to 100. You can charge more cycles. They just don't have quite as much kick. So they're a little bit weaker battery, a little bit heavier, but they last forever.
Is it the next, well, there's some limitations. It's maybe the next generation for certain applications.
Yes.
But maybe not for the most.
For the most,
If you have a race car or BMW,
you would
something,
never.
go as fast as you want to go.
Exactly.
But if you've got a truck, then I'm an electrician,
So the problem is on the truck, those are, the weight becomes the issue. So these are being used. Most electric cars worldwide are already using them, but most electric cars worldwide are very small and Chinese. So all the ones in China practically use this. Already.
Okay.
The Tesla Model 3 and Y standard range already use it. But in America, I don't know of any other cars that are already using it because it was because of a goofy patent agreement. It wasn't legal to use them until about a year ago in cars outside of China. So it was a big cluster. Yeah. Any other great questions? We've got about 2 minutes left for questions.
I can't even ask you too many questions.
Well, I do want to thank you guys for coming out. If you haven't seen my channel, I'm Brian from My Tesla Weekend. I do daily videos. I do regular live streams. I interview important people. Just this morning I had a video where I interviewed the CEO of Aptera for the 3rd time. There are people around the industry who know me, and I get out to regular events where I get to talk to folks like you, but I get to meet people who know things that I don't. And that's where I get to get inside information that I'm not supposed to have. And like Bo, the service center manager here, has been kind enough to never give me any information, but he has pulled me aside to ask me where the heck I got it. He said, some of the stuff you said, I didn't even find out until a week later. Yeah, that's what I do. So,
I got one more question.
yes, sir.
We've been charging 85% lately. You said 80 is better than 85.
So which car?
Tesla Model 3?
I wouldn't worry about 85. Anybody? Because, I will show you this real quick. The Model S and X has a less sophisticated battery than the 3 and Y, but this is how well it survives. This is over 250,000 kilometers, which is what, 150,000 miles. And this is the chart if you normalize it. See, this is 85%. If you normalize it back to 0, this is everybody. This is people, including people who charge to 100, including people who don't take good care of their battery. And you see only one dot down here in the failure range. And it was an early failure that I imagine was addressed by warranty. So charging to 85, I would not be worried. I would not worry about that one bit myself.
And we probably get 150K out of it, you think?
Oh.
I would say absolutely yes. I would say absolutely yes. Yeah.
How many miles for the motor?
Less knowable. Does anyone have a thought on that?
Most likely the electronics will fail before the motor.
Really?
Yes, the only, I've heard of motor failures in old Model S's. People who would drive the absolute snot out of them for Uber and Lyft. And then what would happen is, because they would get unlimited supercharging, they'd charge the battery all the way up, charge it all the way down, run it all the way down, and they would fry the motor and the batteries and get them replaced under warranty. In the Model 3 and Y, I haven't heard of a whole lot of motor failures, and these cars have been out for years now. I mean, we're
Lots of people have got multiple
200,000-300,000.
There's no brushes on the motor. There's, the things we think about motor failures are just not there. The only thing that could fail probably is the bearings. And bearings are really well understood by engineers.
Yeah. So, well, I apologize. You guys got here with 2 minutes left on my yes, sir.
I have one more. The LFP batteries. Now we're talking Ford and GM and other companies coming to America to build batteries. They all seem to be going for LFP.
Do they?
Seems like that Ford one that was in question. That was an LFP.
Okay. I haven't followed that close enough to know.
Okay.
So that's something I will look into.
I
Yeah.
think they're still guessing.
I think they are still guessing.
I don't think they're very
Well,
solid.
they were
on
dealing. The problem was they had to use Chinese to work with them.
There you
go.
That was the big. Yeah, that was the
Well,
big
and
issue.
with GM with their Ultium battery that they scrapped before ever using. So what was that, the Penultium battery? Come on, guys.
You see that? They promoted the guy to CEO of that section. He says, here's what we need to do. They said, oh no.
You're out of
Check
Oh,
it
wow.
out. Yeah. It was
Wow.
great.
Like these.
Yeah. All right.
Told them what they needed to know, and they
For per amount of juice, they get less juice per pound, so to speak. But they last a lot longer, which is why in a standard range application they work great, and in small city cars like in China and Europe they work great. But if you're trying to put one in a Mustang, you might be disappointed.
Analogy.
Do they charge faster?
Not faster, but the charge curve is flatter. So if you're charging to 100, you'll get to 100 quick.
Batteries have gotten better and better and better, but I always remember it was like early on it was awkward to go with rechargeable AA batteries and stuff like that. The alkalines were a little stronger, they last a bit longer, but they last a bit longer on the charge, but you couldn't recharge them. Once it's gone, the rechargeables weren't quite as strong, but you could recharge them over and over again. And now they're on par. I mean, I've got hundreds of those AA batteries. I run everything I can off of AA's, and they're awesome. They're great.
Yeah.
And I think that'd be a analogy to the
Yeah.
to those two power levels.
Yeah.
The thing on batteries is don't believe the claims until it's in mass production.
Yeah.
You get, every day there's a claim of this new battery technology, and it's somebody trying to get money. And it's so hard to get it from the lab.
Right. Every week there's a miracle battery that can do anything except leave the lab. So, well, thank you guys. We've got a couple more great presentations coming up.
Thank you, Brian.
Thank you.